that I thought he had Huff too low.
Yeah.
Uh,
Huff's really good though. Golly, they're good.
yeah, I think if they're playing at the top of their game and Weddington is playing at the top of their game, that Huff would win. Yes. Um,
The one
if
thing with Weddington has though is that execution that very few teams have it to that degree, like Charlotte Catholic does, and
well,
that's a little intangible that kind of brings you up your ceiling a little bit higher.
Huff is one of those teams too, though.
Oh, is it? Okay. I did not know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, this year's team. That's what Sam was really getting on about last night is how well they play technique, especially on defense. They're they're a pretty sound football team. I think their football IQ is extremely high. They're I'm gonna flip back. What I should have said last night, and this very much applies to Huff, but this was concerning Weddington and Cuthbertson when Langston said it'll be a game in the could be a game in the fourth quarter, and I took myself off of mute and I said no way or something like that. The reason I don't think that game will be real close goes in this order: numbers, size, athleticism, and speed. Weddington's got it all. And they're top notch in each one of those areas. And if you got all that, I mean, you got everything you need. Some teams have some size, but they don't have the other things to go with it, or they don't have the size. That's one of the things that keeps a West Charlotte from being able to play a game against a Huff because they don't have the same kind of size to match up. They got the athleticism, they got the speed. They don't have the numbers either, but they could still play 4 quarters if they don't have a lot of injuries. They have enough players to play a Huff in a 4 quarter game, but if they sustain even some minor, let's say just game ending injuries, but not week ending injuries. They could be back the next week. Um, they can't take too many of those. Uh, when you got numbers and you've got size and speed and athleticism, and I'll throw in when talking about Huff, just like what you were mentioning about Weddington, and you've got the IQ, you've got the technique and discipline to play the game. And when the discipline, I mean, I'm not talking about personal fouls, unsportsmanlike. I'm talking about the discipline within the play to execute your assignment as whatever it may be. If you've got those things, and that's what makes Weddington so good, is they do have those things.
Right.
Uh, it Weddington's got maybe the best defense. Maybe they've got the best front. They definitely got the best front four, and probably the best front seven. Huff's real close, and Huff's probably got the best secondary. But that's a man, Jim. That is a strong front of Weddington on defense. It's it's uh,
Gotcha.
it's unreal. It'll be. I don't know if I want to say interesting as much as it's going to be a challenge in the playoffs for teams um, to be able to. I didn't go live on Instagram yet. Now I am. Now we are. I think that's going to make the West playoffs. I think the West playoffs are going to be
Oh, it's going to be brutal. I mean, you got.
really good.
I mean, besides having like to me the three-headed monster right now is Grimsley, Weddington, and Huff.
Mm.
Not in that order. Just those are your top
Yeah,
three.
those are your top three, right? I agree.
And then you got teams like Independence, Mallard Creek, East Forsyth, Mount Tabor, uh, Charlotte Catholic is in there. That's going to be brutal. I mean, it's whoever emerges from the 4A West is going to be bruised, black and bruised.
You know,
Northern Guilford, they're undefeated right now.
right?
Northwest Guilford's a very good team. I mean, it's you not only have the Charlotte teams, you also have the Triad teams, and and then you got Watauga, that's kind of just out there.
Yeah, but Watauga just always seems when a team goes up the mountain to play them from Mecklenburg County, Union County, because Sun Valley's gone up and beaten ACR. Seems like those Union County teams more times than not go against the Asheville teams later in the playoffs, and Mecklenburg County teams end up hitting the Watauga. But it's always Jim. It's Watauga has a hard time, I think, playing with the speed that's down here,
Right.
the athleticism and the speed. But
Well,
it's a
too,
great, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Watauga being, let's say they have home field advantage for 2 or 3 weeks. Going to Watauga under the climate, the environmental climate I'm talking about right now, where you might not go to a direct line like you have in the past. You might have to, I don't know how 421 is right now in Watauga.
I don't
Um,
either.
the weather, I mean, obviously you got a lot of devastation in that general area. Do you think that plays in the hand of Watauga at all, hosting a playoff game or two? I mean, it can't hurt them.
It can't hurt them. I think the good question would be how easy is it to get there? Do you have to take strange routes? Uh, I got a business. I got an email yesterday that said I might be needed in Arden, so could I give a quote? And so I looked, and normally I go 74 to 26 up, and I can't go 74. 74 is closed. Outside of Shelby, there's lots of road closures on 74 from there to Columbus, over there at 26. So that surprised me a little when I actually looked at it that close on the map. That I know that was a bad hit area, but then it makes you think, well, what would it be like if uh, I went up to Watauga to watch West Charlotte play in 2006, and cold, and it's still a bit of a drive. It's just it almost feels like you can get to Asheville quicker than you
Oh,
can to Boone.
you probably can. It's easier for me because I can go through the triad,
Hmm.
and from Winston Salem to Boone, I think it's probably easier to get to Winston Salem to Boone than it is from Asheville to Boone.
Right.
And
So I don't know. That's a good question. What's it going to be like? If who might it be? A Mallard Creek. It's probably going to be somebody like a Mallard Creek that would go up there. Um, an
uh,
Olympic, a Mallard Creek,
maybe a Myers Park or somebody
a
like
Myers
that.
Park, an Ardrey Kell, maybe. I looked at the RPI, and Ardrey Kell's at 30 right now. I think they got it. I don't know that they will not make it. That was brought up last night, and I didn't see that in the RPI.
Let's
Uh,
see on the Audrey Kell. Actually, I had them on the outside looking in. I think they're like they changed the RPI sometime recently. I might not have the right
yeah,
information.
I looked about 2 hours ago, and I'm pretty sure they were 30
Okay,
uh,
I got
at
some
number.
some faulty or some late information or not current information. Let's see here.
You might want to look just because, there's no telling what Dale saw, but Dale may not have seen what he thought he saw.
Let's see what else saw. Let's see what Jim
Yeah, because
sees. Myers Park is at 30. Butler's at
Myers Park is
31,
at 30.
and
Where's Ardrey Hill?
Ardrey Hill is 37.
37. Yeah, I was looking at Butler now that you mentioned that, because I'm really curious as to, is Butler going to make the playoffs?
I mean,
I think
they're going
going
to
to
be
have.
right on the edge on that. I mean, they got one more game, a game that is probably not going to help them out on when it comes to a win. They have to play Independence,
Yeah, they're not going to win that game, I don't think.
but at the same time, Independence is their their record is 7-1, and they'll be 8-1 after they beat Rocky River this week, and I'm sure their Independence's opponents. Let's see what their OWP is. Independence. It's Independence is not really ranked that high. They're at 32, and their OWP is at 0.3125, which means they
Hmm.
played a pretty soft schedule.
Yeah, if you look down I think it's the first winless team that's in that you see there. I forget who it is. They're
Cox
Owen,
Mill,
huh?
Cox Mill over in Concord. Their OWP is 0.65997.
Now
That's a tough
I'm
schedule.
look. Yeah, if you look at, so I think they have they kind of have a higher RPI, overall RPI, than a number of 3-win teams,
Oh, right.
because
They're head of Hopewell, who's
yeah,
3-5. They're head of Berry, who's 3-5. Actually, Berry's got the second lowest RPI.
Barry,
They're
Garinger, East Mac, yep, they're all right down there at the bottom.
Rocky River's right there, Hickory
Yep.
Ridge.
Hmm.
So, looking at it, I was playing around a little bit with the current seedings, how I think it's going to be. First thing you do is you always seed by the conference champions. There's like I think 9 4A West teams that have a chance to get that number one seed. They'll be ranked 1 through 9.
Hmm.
Uh, right now, Grimsley at 1, Weddington at 2, East Forsyth at 3, Watauga at 4, and Huff at 5.
Hmm.
Huff at 5 is kind of that's a little bit
Well,
lower.
it's
But I
where
don't like
RP
RPI.
it's where RPI puts them, though. And I
Yeah.
noticed that the RPI, and I don't know how much it can change between now and playoffs, but the RPI between Weddington and Grimsley is real close. It's in, is it in the hundreds? I think.
It's in the Grimsley is 0.739, Weddington is 0.732. So it's like
So it's in the
six,
thousands. Yeah,
yeah, 6 1 thousandths of the difference. And
exactly. So very, very close. So when I saw that, assuming Weddington doesn't stumble like they did last year, but even though they stumbled last year, their RPI held them up. Um, they still have a chance to possibly snatch a number one.
the
I don't know.
one thing that's helping Grimsley, they have to play the last game of the season. They played Northern Guilford, who was 8-0, and
Hmm.
they're number 3 in the RPIs. And
Yeah,
if you
that'll
beat
help.
them, that's going to help Grimsley. And
That'll help them. Yeah, exactly.
Weddington's got to make the Grimsley stumbles to get a number one seed. But you know what? I guarantee Weddington doesn't care if they host the game or play it at Greensboro. I mean, it's going to be a epic battle wherever it is.
Exactly. When you get that late in the season, I think, um, the biggest thing for teams like that, I believe, as long as it's not like you brought up earlier, how do they maybe have to get to Watauga if they go? If you don't have those extra, if you just got to get on a bus and drive up to Grimsley from um, uh, Weddington, that's not a big deal. So all the only thing they're losing now is the gate money from a home game. I don't. I think the home field is usually the programs that do the Massey's is the one that I knew the most, the Massey algorithm, and Massey gave, now that we're talking 20 years ago, gave 3 points to home field. Um, so if you had home field, it was worth 3 points. I don't think it's worth quite as much if Weddington and Grimsley's playing, but I still think it's worth a point or two.
Yeah, from my own research, the home field advantage gets smaller as the season progresses,
Hmm.
and the especially when you have a young team who might be intimidated a little bit more from a away crowd. It can impact it, but it really doesn't impact that much. And to be honest with you, there's not many places in North Carolina where I consider to be a hostile environment. I mean, you got places like Richmond, it's a hostile environment. Dudley can be a very hostile environment. Grimsley can be a very hostile
Yeah,
environment.
so Grimsley's, if you've been to Weddington, Weddington can be too. The most the most potentially hostile environment is that I've been to is Charlotte Catholic.
Yeah, I was going to say
Uh,
Catholic. It doesn't matter what sport it is. They could be arm wrestling. They'll be
right, but
they'll get people.
the fact that the sidelines, and I'm talking about the actual sideline, the for the field of play is less than on the visitor's side is approximately 10 foot to the stands, and maybe on the home side, I don't know, maybe it could be 12 to 15 foot. It's real close. So and then when you get down at uh, the end zone where they come from the locker rooms and come down the hill to come in, and you get down into that part of the end zone, Jim, it's that's where the students are. Students are everywhere, but the students really jam up down there. So if you're driving into that part of the field and they're going at it, it's hard. It's hard to communicate. Um,
Right.
so I yeah, I love these environments. Some of these environments, but if you're going to go to Independence and play, it's not so hostile. Um, you're going to go to
You know,
Palisades, Mallard Creek,
back
Huff.
in the Rocky River days, there were two places that you did not want to play an away game. One, of course, was Charlotte Catholic back when there were 2A. The other one was South Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
That was some brutal people over there in South Stanley. I mean, they could get under your skin. I mean, just the tone and everything else. And I don't. South Stanley had some talent, but they've never had a huge amount of numbers. But that had a great fan base. So got to give a shout out to that. So
Yes.
Dan, I was going to say though, this playoff season is going to be really interesting, at least with these and 4As for both the East and the West. I think there's 4A West is definitely deep and wide. 4A East
Mm-hmm.
is getting there. I think there's 8 teams that have a legitimate chance to get into the state championship game. 3A East is pretty deep. 3A West obviously is deep. But the big difference between the East and West, 1A and 2A West is very deep, and the East is not.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
want to
going to.
see some. I want to see new teams. I want to see teams that like, maybe maybe oh gosh, I don't know, West Craven coming up here to play Cummings or something like that. I
Uh-huh.
love to see those games. I try my best to see as many teams across the state as I can, and I counted it up in the last 15 years. I've seen 129 different teams play.
I can believe it.
You've probably seen at least that many yourself.
I've seen a lot of different teams play. I've had some fortunate ability, although I've seen some in that situation. It's the same teams usually because here in Charlotte we have the opening week where uh, you can possibly catch 3 games or 4 games. So uh, just in the first week of play, the fact that they're bringing in now some other like out of South Carolina, we're getting to see teams from South Carolina play. That gives more opportunity to see other teams. I I don't travel as much as I used to, but this might be the first year that I don't go to Cleveland County in the regular season. Um, First year in a long time, I should say. I haven't been there yet, and I don't know. It's probably going to be playoffs, Jim, before I go to Cleveland County.
No, in Gaston County, what school would you go to the most? South Point or Ashbrook?
Who have I seen the most?
Right.
Hmm. It's going to be between those two, Ashbrook and South Point. I have seen a decent amount of East Gaston.
East Gaston's not that far from you, is it?
No, it's not. It's real close. It's probably just as quick to get to East Gaston as it is to get to South Point. Ashbrook's a little bit further because you have to go in further into Gaston County. Both South Point and East Gaston are one's in Belmont, one's in Mount Holly. They're right there on the uh, county line, basically. Uh, the fewest that I've seen is probably with Stuart Kramer because it's the newer school, and I've only seen Stuart Kramer a handful of times. Maybe 5 times at the most. I might be surprised if it's actually is 5. Uh, Forest
How about
View.
Turville or Bessemer City? You ever go to any of those games?
I have been to a few. I go to them far less. So um, I've seen Stuart Kramer more than Cherville in Bessemer City.
There are certain schools that are like Chatham County is just south of me, and there's two schools I've yet to go to. I have never been to Jordan Matthews,
Hmm.
and I've never been to Chatham Central. And there's reasons why. It's just that I can't find a good reason to go down to Chatham Central or go to Sauer City because the teams are just not playing competitively right now.
Right.
I love for them to come back and play. I loved if Ashboro started, going 9-1 or so every year. I'd probably go to
Hmm.
Ashboro even, but uh,
You
it's.
know who I haven't seen in person in a long time? You got to think hard about this, but Forest Hills.
I
Um,
saw them last year against Randleman, and I tell you what, Forest Hills
yeah.
look like the old Forest Hills of from back in the 80s and 90s. They're
Right.
at least they did last year. I think they're maybe a tad lower than they were last year, or somewhat lower, but that's a good program.
It is. It's historically pretty good too. Which is what you're mentioning. It used to be when I'd come in from games on Fridays and I'd watch football Friday night. Um, it was always something about Forest Hills on there uh, because they have just traditionally there's good football games, especially with Monroe and some of the other schools down that way. And Pageland, they played across the border. Good football, but I haven't been to Forest Hills in Jim a decade.
Yeah,
That's That's sad
One
to
thing you
say.
found out though, you don't have quite as many chicken feathers on Highway 74 as you used to.
Yeah, going to Marshville and all is I'm accustomed to that.
The
I have to
home of
ride.
Randy Travis.
Exactly, exactly. Now there's more turkey stuff because they do turkey processing there.
Oh
Um,
wow!
yeah, so there's Pilgrim is there. Um,
Did you ever go to Anson County to see
oh
Wadesboro play?
yeah, I've been to uh, Anson County. You know, more times than Forest Hills.
You know what? Anson County used to be a 4A team at one
I
time. I
know,
mean,
I know they were stout 4A team too.
when Ed
Um,
Emery was there, they had a good
hmm
team. And
Yep,
how about Albemarle? You ever go to Albemarle High School?
a couple of times. Yeah, hmm yeah,
You
in
probably didn't have much
Thomasville.
reason to go to North Stanley High School.
I've never been to North Stanley. I've been by there, but I've never been to a football game there.
Yeah, go to
Uh,
Norris Jeffries Stadium. Norris Jeffries, he was the very first principal at North Stanley, and he was the
uh-huh.
last Baden high school football coach. Baden, the last year they played was 1961, and the last team they played was Charlotte Country Day, believe it or not.
Oh wow.
And I think they lost that game like 31-0. But um, that's I think actually that was Country Day's first or second year in playing varsity. I think it was their very first year of playing true
Oh,
varsity ball. So,
uh-huh. That was a
but
while ago. Yeah.
yeah, Norris Jeffries was like about 5'4", 120 pounds or so. He was a head coach at Goldsboro High School, and he left because he wanted to come to a more rural area, and he thought the kids at Baden didn't have much, and he's right about that. But real small guy, very matter of the fact. He was the Dick Crumb before there was Dick Crumb. Very dry sense of humor. He was a chemistry professor or chemistry teacher at North Stanley, and uh, one of my best friends from high school, his father, who Mike Carrick, he passed away a few years ago from COVID. Uh, Mike is like 6'1", 6'2" or so. Norris 5'4", 130 pounds. Mike was like 220, 215 at the time. Big strapping guy. He was running around the corner at North Stanley, and he wasn't looking where he was. He was running by looking behind his shoulder, and he plowed right into North Jeffrey. The whole place got quiet. I mean, and they thought he killed him. And
hmm
Norris kind of looked up. He was laid on the ground. He got up and he says, if you did that to a mere mortal, you'd kill him, and just walked away. And everybody was just like stunned that
Oh wow.
he did that. He probably was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain right now. I need to get a hot shower." But uh,
You know, I got hit in the first time in I don't know how long Friday night. Um, Huff Kid was big, boy, and I just can't believe how big these kids are. Um, he's running, they're running right to left, and I'm standing there videoing, and he's coming at me, and so I started to back up a little bit, and what happened is he was tackled and taken down, and then he kind of rolled, and his shoulder pads scraped my shin. So I got a gash on my. I
oh
don't
god,
take that. Don't take that the wrong way. It's not a cut gash, but it did scrape.
indention.
It's more. No, no, no. It took skin off.
Oh, didn't really
Yeah, it took skin off. When I said gash, I think like a knife cut.
scrape.
Uh,
Got
yeah,
scraped.
a nice scrape that was about yeah, I don't know, 2.5, 3 inches long. My youngest granddaughter, I was sitting on the couch the other day, and uh, she's all about kissing boo boos and that kind of stuff. And so my my jogging pants had pulled up a little bit, almost up to my knee, basically, because of the way I was sitting. So that injury was very bold, and she said, "Oh, Grandpa got a big boo boo." uh,
I haven't been hit on the sideline. I always, the thing about me is I know where the ripcord is. I know how to pull it really fast. And the one thing I do have, I have bursitis in my left shoulder right now,
uh-huh.
and I see I can barely, I can't lift my arm straight. It has to come at an angle at this point. This arm right here, I can go straight up, but
Yeah.
this one right now I can't, and without like being in a lot of pain. And it's been a challenge. I've never had bursitis before, and it's just it sucks getting old.
Well, my problem with it was that I was calculating where he would go based, his trajectory. So I was calculating where he would go to, and he should have ended up to my left over here, but the way he was tackled and the guy kind of was tackling him, kind of slid down a little bit and grabbed him by the feet, and kind of pulled his feet, so he went down sooner. And when he went down and he rolled, um, I didn't think he would get touched. I actually thought he was going to run out of bounds. He was going to make it out of bounds. That was his trajectory, although he was looking like he was going to try to find a place he could hit the sideline and cut. But the way he was going, I'm like, yeah, he's going to end up about 4 or 5 foot to my left. But no, all of a sudden he goes down and he rolled, and it wasn't bad. I barely knew it happened until later that night. It was hurting a little bit, and I looked at it when I got in the shower, and like, oh, I guess that's what he did. And that's
So
the
right now,
only time.
if you had to rank the Mecklenburg County schools only, you'll throw in Charlotte Catholic. We're not going to talk about Charlotte Mecklenburg system, but Mecklenburg high schools. How would you rank if you had to do a top 10? How would you rank them right now?
A top 10. Huff, Catholic, maybe Independence, Mallard Creek. Those are real close to each other. Um, maybe,
It gets tougher after four.
yeah. So Butler's down their quarterback. I don't know how much that hinders them. Somewhere coming up, not too far after that's going to be Palisades.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe Palisades you could put at five right now.
Maybe somewhere between five, and they're probably realistically somewhere between 5 and 7. It's so they're better than Olympic. Obviously, they beat them, what, 3 scores. Um, I think they're better than Audrey Kell. They beat Myers Park. They're better than Myers Park. You got all those other teams that just really are not competitive against these teams. The maybe just above those teams and below the ones we just mentioned are teams like North Mecklenburg,
Right.
Chambers. Chambers might be Chambers might be a top 10, but they're going to be closer to 10, I think. Somewhere
Yeah, I agree.
between 7 and 10, something like that. Um,
I was thinking, how was Hopewell this year?
no, Hopewell has a
They won
nice
Super
record
Bowls.
for Hopewell, but
Yeah.
you look at their RPI, or you look at their opponents winning percentage, and their opponents winning percentage is not very good.
Well, they beat
Um,
Garinger, they beat Berry, and they beat Harding. So that's the only three wins they have. So not much.
exactly. And you look where those teams are at in the RPI, they're down at the very bottom, those three teams.
West Mac for a 3A school has played a brutal schedule.
They have played a brutal schedule, um, but they're still probably. I mean, I'd have to lay all the teams out, but in my head, I'm thinking West Mac is somewhere 12 to 15, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 to 15.
What would you
There's
put West Charlotte on the whole group?
Well, you know what? I was just doing 418s, wasn't I? West Charlotte is right behind Huff. They're on par with
Catholic.
Mallard Creek. Um, no, because I think Catholic's deceptionally good this year. Um,
I think Catholic's gotten better as the season's progressed too.
they have, and so they're doing better than would have expected, and they've they've gotten, as you say, better as the season has gone on. They're going to win a decently tough conference. West Charlotte is, for 3A team. They're the best 3A team in Charlotte without question, and they're a top five. They're somewhere right there after Huff and Charlotte Catholic, and I think they're changeable with Mallard Creek. I believe if West Charlotte and Mallard Creek played each other 10 times, it's going to be close to a 50-50 split between those two.
Right.
Um, West Charlotte, and Sam admitted it, West Charlotte would never beat Huff, no matter how many times they played. They'd never beat them. They would never have a close game.
Yeah.
And I thought going into that game it was going to be I told the coaches over at Huff before the game, I said, I'm expecting a good game. Oh, we don't want to hear that. I said, no, I'm expecting. I said, here's what I think is going to happen. I said, if West Charlotte wins, it would be a very close game. So West Charlotte's either going to win or lose in a close score or get blown out. I said, it's going to, there's four options, and one of those options is not on the table for West Charlotte, and that's West Charlotte blowing out Huff. And after seeing them play now and the matchups and everything, I think Huff would beat West Charlotte by 2 to 4 scores every time they played. So
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm gonna share my
why are we only got one person? I'm really shocked at that. Um,
I did something wrong here.
I thought we'd have more people on. I hope this thing's getting pushed out properly. Hopefully it's going out to Facebook. Let me see. And I feel like I turned Facebook on. So there's YouTube. I must not have turned on Facebook. Dale. I did not.
I don't think it's on.
It's coming on now.
Okay.
Darn it, Dale.
That's cool.
Okay. That's I didn't realize that. Yeah, there's so many teams here, Jim. But
Yeah.
when you get down to those 10 and below, they're really not much better than the mid-tier teams in most of the other conferences. I hate to say that, but
No,
a Garinger were to play a Concord probably wins that game. I don't know. Concord's not doing so well this year, but neither is Garinger, are they?
I think J.M. Robinson would blow them out. Northwest Cabarrus would beat them handily. West
Who,
Cabarrus would
Garinger?
win.
I think
Yeah.
most teams in the state would beat Garinger, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think the majority of 3A, 2A, and I don't want to say the majority of 1A because 1A is like really, really, really good, 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 and then it kind of just goes down.
I was
Um,
gonna say one third of the 1A teams could definitely beat
yeah,
Carringer.
there you go.
Um, the Yeah, it's interesting with Mecklenburg County because you have the haves and have-nots. Like right now, besides Garinger, uh, Barry to me is a have-not. Harding is a have-not.
Hmm.
Rocky River is a have-not. Valentine Ridge, I think it's too early to tell what will happen. I don't know if they'll get better next year when they have seniors playing.
They're going to be, I'll tell you now, they will be similar to what you see from an Ardrey Kale. Um,
Competitive, kind of.
I
Would you say
think,
they're like Ardrey Hill, Providence? Providence is kind of like seems to be about in that mix a lot of times.
yeah, Providence was another team that's on the bubble for the
Yeah.
playoffs. I think they were at 40 because they only have 2 wins. Providence is a team that in the past has shown we got at least one more or two more people. Um, so turning on Facebook did help. Providence is, I don't know. I always feel like they can be better than what they show, Jim. But RDKL, so when RDKL kind of damaged Providence when RDKL opened up, by pulling some of that base. Um, but I can't think that's all of it because the way Charlotte's growing, we have new populations coming in. I forget what the number of new people in Charlotte is a day, but it's a lot. So Charlotte's growing. That's why Palisades opening, taking students away from Olympic, but Olympic was so big, and this part of Charlotte is really growing. So they got new population filling in. Same thing happened down uh, in the Ballantyne area, and just knowing that community, I think it's going to be a similar population that Ardrey has. So Ardrey had good seasons. They they win 8 to 10 games a few times. So anyway, Ballantyne could be a similar caliber of team as Ardrey. Keep
You
going.
know, Wake County has 25 high schools in it. 24 of them are 4A and one 3A now. That's just
Hmm.
unbelievable, isn't it?
It is unbelievable. How many
So,
privates in Wake County?
you got Ravenscroft is the big one, and I think you have Wake Christian's another one that plays. Parochial, of course, Cardinal
Right.
Gibbons is one of the 25 teams I just mentioned, but um, the only 3A team you have in Wake County is East Wake.
Hmm.
So, so I've got pulled up my rankings for the my Elite Eights.
I don't see
Um,
your screen shared.
okay, I put down it's someone on here on the
Oh, there it
side.
is. I see it.
Here you go. So I'll go through this real quick. These top three, take your pick on that. I mean, it's Weddington, Grimsley, Huff. You could put Huff one. I don't care. You could put Weddington three. You could put Grimsley one, two, three. I don't care. Those three teams right there, I'd say there's probably a 75% chance one of those three teams will represent the West. I'm gonna say 75%. I don't know what your thoughts were.
No, it's very, very similar. I think the chance that of of a team that's going to be in playing the last game of the season, um, high probability of one of those top three teams. I think it's a step down. Others can, people stumble, etc. But
Right.
yeah,
It's going to have to take a lot of luck for these other teams, and you can always throw Mallard Creek in here also. I think Mallard Creek right now, they're not a B team to me right now. I think they're a what do I call them, a dark horse at this point.
hmm
I just I do think they have some things they need to work out, and they can move up again. But
Right.
right now, they're not in my Elite Eight. Uh, East Forsyth, I mean, it's hard to go against them right now. They're undefeated. Independence is uh, they're a very solid team. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And Charlotte Catholic, I think Charlotte Catholic's playing some of the best football we've seen in the state right now. And then the rest of it, I think it kind of tapers down a little bit after Catholic, Mount Tabor, and Northern Guilford. Although Northern Guilford is undefeated, the problem with Northern Guilford, besides playing New Bern, maybe one or other two teams, they don't have that impressive win yet. That
Right.
they have to play Grimsley in the season. They beat Grimsley, they'll be an A team or at least a B team. And I don't think it's going to happen though. So here's the 4A East. This is some of it's might uh, to me these top four teams are the best. I mean, I think Roswell has probably the best talents. Cardinal Gibbons probably has the best poise. Hoggard, they have the best experience right now. They just came back from a state championship. Uh, Cleveland, they seem to have a lot of the intangibles. I mean, they can win the close game. They got a lot of speed. Uh, it's just hard to say how to rank them right there. But I think those four are your best teams, and I'm gonna say there's probably a 75%, 80% chance one of those four teams will emerge in the 4A East.
Right. I gotta jump on Facebook and delete this post.
Uh,
Yeah,
so on
keep
about
going.
something stupid.
It looks like somebody posted a link to something which was probably a scam. So
Come see us at this game.
something about, I don't know. You never know with links, but it's tickets or something. But ticket leap, but probably tells me it's most likely a scam.
Right. But Clayton, Millbrook, Richmond County, Leesville Road, you can't dismiss any of those teams. And I really don't know if Clayton is that far away from those top four anyway. I think there's some separation between Clayton and Millbrook and Clayton, Richmond County, and Leesville Road.
Mm-hmm.
So Clayton has a game against Cleveland the last week of the season. It is at Cleveland. Clayton beats Cleveland. They'll be in A group, and depending how big if they beat Cleveland, Cleveland might actually drop it down to the B's. But we shall see. It's going to be fun. Now I need your help on this one. This 3A West.
Yeah, I'm back. I got it deleted. All right.
Hickory, Dudley, J.M. Robinson, West Charlotte. Have you ever seen the 3A West as strong as it is right now?
Um,
I mean, maybe back in the
maybe.
late 90s.
Yeah, it's been a while. Let's say that. Um, I think those four teams right there are just phenomenally good, and the next three teams are uh, they're really good. Ashbrook might be the better of those three. What's a little disappointing is not seeing, you know, and it's justifiable not seeing Kings Mountain. Kings Mountain's not having, a stellar year. Still playing good football, but
I mean, AC Reynolds, another one
yep.
that's not there. Gosh, there's no team in Cabarrus County in the 3As besides J.M. Robinson.
And
And
and J.M. Robinson's a good team.
yeah,
That's a solid it's a solid 3A team. I think that's actually a really solid field of teams, and the right things roll. One of those B teams has a really good shot.
well, the funny thing about it is Crest beats Ashbrook. I think they beat them like 29-12. South Point beats Crest by a point or two.
Mm-hmm.
and then Ashbrook beats South Point by 3 points. So the records these teams have they've won one game against each other and they've lost one game against each other.
Exactly.
I love that. I wish you see so many conferences where you have 8 teams and it's like 7-0, 6-1, 5-2, 4-3. I like
Mm-hmm.
seeing teams win a conference when they've lost 2 games.
Right.
So it's going to
Or
be fun on that.
or have a tie for conference, or which of course requires someone to lose some games. Exactly. I like to see that too. I like competition.
Me too. And tell you what, 71st is the best team in the East. But I tell you what,
Mm-hmm.
Havelock Williams and Northern Nash, they are really solid. Northern Nash might be the best of the lot in here. Cape Fear is really good. Jacksonville only lost to Havelock by I think I forgot what it. Or actually, I think yeah they lost to Havelock by a touchdown I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean these teams are really good. Richland's undefeated. Southern Durham's lost one game the whole season. Uh, I mean you also got Southern Alamance that's out there. Uh, Southern Nash is another team. You got I'm trying to think here. Southern Alabama, Southern Nash. There's a Rocky Mount. I mean Rocky Mount beat Southern Nash. They've been competitive in a lot of games so far. Northern Nash right now though, if there's one team that could possibly beat 71st, I'm leaning towards Northern Nash at this point. So two-way West. Where do
Oh
we go from here?
man.
Two-way
Yeah.
West is deep.
Yeah. Let's see here. Those three are really good teams. I'm just looking down the list to see. There's no give me's if they end up having to meet. I don't think there are. I mean, that's a solid group of bees actually.
And I mean West Stokes is they lost to Breesville, who's number
Mm-hmm.
one, and they've lost to Randleman, who's number four. And they were competitive in those games, so I got to keep an eye out for West Oaks. And the two-way East is disappointing though. There's really only 5 teams that I really think have any legitimate chance of winning.
Uh-huh.
And Southeast Alamance is a team that cannot be taken lightly. This is their second year of varsity, and they're undefeated. And they beat 3A teams in their non-conference schedule. So keep an eye on them. Nash Central, they've lost some games, but their games are to 3A teams. And they did lose to Southwest Edgecombe at the beginning of the season when Southwest Edgecombe was really high. Since then, Southwest Edgecombe has fallen off the face of the earth, but keep an eye on that. Whiteville, they have a one loss, and it was to James Keenan.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Northeastern is your favorite. James Keenan, Whiteville, not they're in the same zip code with them.
Right.
So I'd say right now the top 5 are the where to look at. Unlike 1A East, where Tarboro is the only team and they have their own zip code, they have their own post office, they have their own bakery,
Exactly.
restaurant, everything else, and the rest of them are just trying to find out who's going to play against them in the
Regional.
so
Yeah. As I don't see any challenge. Unfortunately, East.
yeah.
I don't see any challenge. Maybe who will play them? Uh, Not because you have them second, but because I've kind of semi been following them since last year.
They
Uh,
got studs on that team.
yeah,
They got
they could. I think. I don't think they can beat Tarboro, but I
no.
believe that's a good shot at that's a good shot at your regional matchups. If they don't, for some reason, because of RPI, meet the week before. Um,
Tell you what, Pender can score points with the best of them. They lost last week to Whiteville. Lost to them 51-38.
mhm.
But Whiteville, they're I can't say it
Wow.
right, but anyway, Whiteville
Whiteville.
is
You can't
a
get that
very good two.
you can't get that in there. That's the first time you've had D's to show up in the list too, by the way.
Right. Yeah, there's nobody that's these North Side Pine Town's not going to be playing in Raleigh
Right.
or Chapel Hill.
No, no, no,
Now,
no.
1A West, different story.
Yeah.
Mountain Heritage, they came back last week. They played
Hmm.
Saturday, beat Avery handedly.
Yeah.
These
It's
four
good to
teams,
good. It's good to see.
yeah, it is. Um,
Um,
I, I think Murphy possibly could slip into the B's right now. I think these three teams are showing a little bit of separation. Murphy, out of respect, I'd kept Murphy as an A, but these are your favorites. And
right.
starting out with Corvian, they're getting their players from somewhere. I just don't know where.
Well, the school is uh, really close to Mallard Creek. So when I go to Mallard Creek, I pass the school. The way that I go to Mallard Creek, and so they could be getting students from within that area. Um, would be part of the thought process, and there's a lot. There's a large population in that area. Uh, You'd say that anywhere in Charlotte. There's a large population in that area. There's a large,
Right.
but there is a large population right there around the Mallard Creek High School. Within that whole area between 485 and 85, and there's a lot of apartments as well. So there's certainly I think a wealth of younger kids, so high school age, kids to pull from, and it's a replenishing thing in that area. So that's my guess is where most of the players are coming from.
Now, over the years, you've been to many games in Rowan County, maybe Salisbury or West Rowan, or
I've been to more I've been to more West Rowan than Salisbury. Um, I've been to a number of West Rowan games. West Rowan and Mooresville, when used to be a big rivalry. West Rowan, when Scott Young was at West Rowan, uh, gosh, I must have gone to West Rowan. It's not like I go there a lot, but I probably during the Scott Young years went easily half a dozen times that I went to West Rowan. Maybe a few more, maybe no more than probably 10. But that's
Jerry,
for Rowan County, without question. West Rowan, I've been to the most.
did you ever go to East Rowan or South Rowan or North Rowan?
Been to South Rowan, North Rowan.
East Rowan is not just above North Stanley. You can get to East Rowan within 20 minutes from North Stanley.
Okay.
So anyway,
Well, two places I hadn't been: North Stanley and East Rowan.
you don't like Highway 52 for some reason.
No, I like Highway 52. I've been on 52 a number of times. As I told you, Culp Lumber. I've I used to back in the early '80s, early to mid '80s. I worked for an electric motor repair shop, and um, I would many times drive up uh, out of Charlotte, go up through Harrisburg, and up and then catch 52 and come over to Albemarle, and then go over to what's just east of Albemarle there.
Troy or
No, I mean I've been to Troy, but that's not where I'm thinking. The
on 2427.
Norwood.
Okay, it's going down south then. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of east and southeast.
Yeah, south. Yeah, east
Yeah,
southeast or whatever. Yeah.
exactly. Norwood Fertilizer and Norwood Industries. A couple of places over there I'd go to.
And
So I've driven on 52 a lot.
then you can keep on going down to Wadesboro.
Yep, exactly. Just keep straight on down.
Yeah. So big games this weekend. Like in the East, there's not a lot of exciting games. The Southern Nash versus Northern Nash. I think if you like seeing teams that run, and to me,
Hmm.
it's like Bo Schembechler versus Woody Hayes. Woody Hayes being Southern Nash and Bo Schembechler being Northern Nash. Because Northern will throw the ball a little bit, maybe 6, 8 times. Southern,
Right.
no. They love to run. They might throw the ball 2, 3 times most. Uh, Duplin County, East Duplin, and Wallace Rose Hill, both those teams are wanting a win. I forgot what the other ones were we talked about uh, last week or on yesterday, but those are two of the big ones for me that I think is worth going to. Oh, you know what? It was Laney and New Brunswick
Right.
or North Brunswick.
No.
That's could be
Mhm.
a pretty good game. That's I think I agree with what Chris was saying yesterday that Laney's got to be favored, but North Brunswick's going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. The other one has to do with two legendary baseball players in their alma mater, or their, I guess
Right.
their what would be their alma mater now, which would be for Jim Catfish Hunter, obviously for Quemmons, and for Gaylord Perry, which is Martin County. It used to be Williamston High School, then it was Riverside. Now it's Martin County.
And of course,
Um,
I'm a catfish fan.
oh, I am too. I mean, back in the '70s, early '70s. I mean, look what Charlie Finley did. You had Blue Moon Odom, who, to be honest with you, he had just as much talent as any of those other guys in Oakland. You had Vida Blue, who, Vida only threw.
I like Vita Blue too. Oh
He
yeah.
only, he only had over 200 strikeouts one time in his whole career. It was like in '71, he had 306 strikeouts. After that season, never more than 200.
Hmm.
But he could throw some seed.
Yes, he could.
And Ken Holtzman, I mean, a great lefty. Trying to think else. Raleigh Fingers, obviously. You got a who was other? Paul Lindblad. So Lindblad was that his name? Or Lindbald? He was a Lynn Krause. He was a good pitcher. But I mean, it's hard to beat Vida Blue, Ken Holtzman, and Catfish Hunters is your top three. But
Well, that's why they got rings.
look at Gaylord Perry's career though. He
Oh.
played his first 10 years with the Giants, and
Hmm.
he was a notorious bad hitter. And he said that there would be a man on the moon before he hits a home run. Well, the day before the Apollo landed on the moon, he actually hit his first home run. I think it was the only home run he had his whole career. And he played for the Giants, then he ended up going to Cleveland. He went to play for Billy Martin at Texas, and then he ended up over, I think, back in Cleveland, and ended up in San Diego. Went to the Yankees for a little bit. He went to the Mariners. He was known as the Ancient Mariners, and I think he ended up in the Royals. He was all over the place. But
Billy Martin was
anyway,
all over the place. When you mentioned Billy Martin, I thought, man, he's been all over the place too.
Milton Martin, 69 with the Twins. 70, he was not a manager. 71, 73, he was with the Tigers.
He was a third base coach then, wasn't he?
I think he was 1970. He was a third base coach. 71,
If I remember correctly, I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
71, 73 he was with the Tigers. Got fired in the season, and 2 weeks before he got fired, he said that the owner of the Texas Rangers said that Whitey Herzog is the best young manager in baseball. Billy Martin gets fired from the Tigers. What does the owner do? He fires Whitey and hires Billy Martin. And ownership in Texas changed. Brad Corbett takes over for Texas, and Martin gets fired. And within a month, he's with the Yankees, and he was in and out of the Yankees. Then, back when he took over the Athletics in 1980, the Athletics the 3 years before were horrible. I think they lost 108 games in '79. Within the first season, I think they were at like 83 and 79 under Martin. Then got them to the playoffs in '81, and then throwing all those Brill cream balls that his pitchers did to caught up with him in '82 and got fired back with the Yankees. So that area though, we're talking about Gates,
Yeah.
the
Yeah. The football.
Perquimans and Williamston. It's not known for football. It's known for baseball. So
Well, I think the biggest games we have are that Ashbrook Kings Mountain game's, I think, going to be a very big game.
in Ardrey Kell, they're playing Olympic this week.
That's going to be a very competitive game, I think. I think it'll be a great ball game to go to, and it's maybe if my list expanded, I would expand it onto the list for several reasons. One, it's real close, but
Right.
It'll be a very competitive game, and I haven't seen Ardrey Kell this year, but I do believe that's going to be a one scorish kind of game. I do think Olympic will win the game, but I think that'll be one of the closer football games, competitive football games we have
That's going to be a
in the
dangerous game
area.
for Olympic. Ardrey
What's
Kell
that?
is. I mean, that's going to be a dangerous game because Ardrey Kell is against the wall right now.
They need a win. There's no question. They need a win if they want to play in the playoffs. I think Olympics okay. Even if they lost, their RPI would get them in. Um, but Ardrey Kell's really, they need a win.
Right.
Uh, there's an outside chance if Ardrey Kell were to win the next two games, then they would tie for the conference championship with Palisades, and that would probably. So how would that work? No, they would not tie. There would not be a three-way tie, because Olympic would have two losses. So if Ardrey Kell
Olympic
won,
lost to Palisades.
so if they beat, Olympic lost to the Palisades. But if Ardrey Kell beats Olympic, then there can't be a three-way tie um, for the conference. So that would mean that if Ardrey Kell beat Palisades, then they would tie with the same record, but Ardrey Kell would have the head-to-head over them. So Ardrey Kell would win the conference championship.
Right.
So they still have an outside. There's still a road to the conference championship for them. There's no road for Olympic because Palisades beat Olympic. So for Olympic, it's just going to help RPI to win.
Right, and Palisade only has one game left, and that's against Ardrey Kell.
Exactly.
The big thing with Ardrey Kell that cost them was losing to Myers Park. That's the one that killed them.
And wasn't at the game. I don't know, but I thought Ardrey Kell would win that game going into the game, and it took an overtime game for Myers Park to win. But that's kind of a bad loss for Myers Park. For Ardrey Kell. It's a game they should have won, I think.
No, I think Providence and South Meck were supposed to play on Monday. Did that not happen?
I don't know.
I thought they
Honestly,
might have switched.
I didn't know they were playing Monday.
I thought they were. Maybe I'm thinking wrong here, but
No, you may be right. I didn't check. I
I
should have
think they.
checked.
I don't. I think that they were thinking about trying to do a makeup game or something from
Right.
early on this season.
I should have checked to see if they or to see if anybody was playing Monday. I didn't think to do that with the
I don't think
chance
they
that people
played.
make doesn't show them playing.
Let me
I
check
didn't
again.
I didn't see anything that came across. Of course, I didn't look Twitter. I hadn't looked at Twitter a lot this week. I've
I'm
been
gonna
too
check
busy
on
working.
Max Prep, see what we have here. For some reason, I thought they were supposed to play. Actually, no, they did not. They're moving that Providence South game to the November 8th. It's a makeup game between those two teams.
Okay, so that must be the free week to play.
Right.
But yeah, if it's a makeup game, they could list it in Max Preps. They just can't list any games that are an 11th game. They can't
Right.
put that into Max Preps. So we'll have to kind of pay attention to who might play. I think smart teams don't play because you know why risk an injury. Um, if you've got 10 games under your belt, I don't see any reason to play.
Now,
I
can you
really.
play do a scrimmage against another team?
Well, it's basic. It's a glorified scrimmage, is what
I
it
mean,
is.
scrimmage without maybe too much contact. Maybe play two quarters or something.
I certainly. I don't know why someone couldn't joint practice. I don't know if there are any rules against that, and you could call that a joint practice. But if you played it on a Friday night and sold tickets, um, yeah, I don't know. I honestly believe if you got 10 games under your belt, and especially if you're a team that's already got 8, 9, 10 wins, I wouldn't play. I'd rest. I'd rest my boys so that I'd have them fresh for the playoffs. You gain nothing unless you wanted to play all kids that don't play because it doesn't count against your record. So you could play your threes, your twos, and your threes, and JVs that you kids that you bring up. There could possibly be some value in that.
No.
Find some talent for the playoffs.
The
Who
reason
is
I
these?
think about playing under this certain thing is if you wanted to play around with your playbook a little bit, but this is a little bit late in the season to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to introduce any new schemes at least. You can maybe introduce a new play if it's something out of a formation you're already running,
Right.
but I don't know. There's just, gosh, man, it's so. This was one of my things about the endowment game had the value of being able to drop a loss and count your endowment game. Um, so there was some value in that 11th game, but this format, I don't see any value other than possibly getting some experience for young kids.
Right.
There is that.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Who is East Forsyth playing this week?
Let's see here. East Forsyth.
See, East is a team that I think is kind of, you have them as a B team, and I think that's a legitimate call for East, and they are potentially a team that can compete, uh, especially if things go right. They could
Right.
compete against those A teams.
Yeah, probably their best win of the season was beating Mount Tabor, and
Hmm.
they beat them by one touchdown. And I have Mount Tabor as a C team. Uh, they They beat Heritage. They beat Jack Brett. They beat AC Reynolds. AC Reynolds with 318. They beat Reagan. Reagan without a quarterback. Davie County's way down. They beat a good Mount Tabor team. Parkland's way down. RJ Reynolds, not going to scare anybody. They got to play Glenn this week, and then last week of the season they'll play West Forsyth.
West Forsyth. That's
That's gonna be their West
yeah.
Forsyth and Mount Tabor are really two good teams. So I'm going to up to Millbrook. I haven't been to Millbrook this season. I'm going to watch them play Blacktale. And last time I went to see Millbrook, they lost an upset to Gardner. So I don't know how welcome I'll be there. have a bad habit of jinxing these teams. But
I just don't. There's not in Charlotte. The only reason I'm considering the Chambers West Charlotte game is maybe see West Charlotte knock off Chambers.
well, on that, I think West Charlotte's going to be playing deep in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Same time, was it Ashbrook? They might be the unsung hero.
They may be. Where's that Ashbrook game at?
Let's
See if it's at Kings Mountain. That's a 7:30 start and a long drive, 45-minute drive.
It's at Kings Mountain.
Yeah, it makes it hard. I love Kings Mountain. I love going to Kings Mountain, but it makes it hard to do the show Friday night.
Yeah.
Being at a game in Kings Mountain. If Kings Mountain started at 7, then it would be okay to go to, because it's not much further for me to go to a Huff game than to a Kings Mountain game. Actually, it's maybe just a tad further, but not much. Maybe easier to get back.
Last 2 weeks I've been to blowouts. Southern Durham halftime was beating Lewisburg 44-0. 7 touchdowns, 44 points. There were like 4 missed extra points. Actually, I think they didn't have 1 extra point. They got 4 missed extra points, and they went 1 for 3 on 2-point conversions. And last week I went to see Carrboro play Oxford Webb. Webb hadn't won a game the whole season, and their quarterback got hot. He had 4 touchdown passes over 30 yards, and it was 26-0 at halftime. So, but sometimes you learn a lot about teams by just even a blowout.
Exactly. You can learn a lot. So there's a question here of what do we think about the CVAC? Super tight currently. Any thoughts?
Let me see here. The CVAC, is that the Catawba Valley? I'm trying to remember which one of that is.
Yeah, I think so. Catawba Valley Athletic Conference.
Yeah, Catawba. Let me see what we got here. It's interesting. Every team has lost at least 1 game. I'm looking at Max Prep. Max Prep's always turns on the noise.
I hate that. Yeah.
I mean, you got Maiden, Lincolnton, and Bunker Hill all with 1 loss. You have West Lincoln and Bandy's with 2 losses. Newton Conover has 1 win on 3 losses. East Burke is 0-3, and West Caldwell is 0-4. Bandy's is. I know that right now they're 5th in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who's to say Bandy's not the best team right now? I mean, they're all good. I think Lincolnton, seeing them at 4-1 kind of surprises me to a certain degree.
Right.
But
Did
right
Maiden
now,
Maiden just beat
beat Bunker Hill
Bunker
28.
Hill, wasn't it? Yeah, Bunker
Yeah.
Hill. Yeah.
Let's see, Lincolnton. I'm kind of curious who all they beat. Lincolnton beat Newton Conover, beat Bandies, beat West Caldwell. They beat East Burke. They have to play Maiden and West Lincoln. Maiden has to be favored in that game. At least I think they would be favored in
Uh-huh.
Maiden. And then our last game this season over, that would be a good one to go to, Dale. If I was in Lincoln County, I'd go to the Lincolnton West Lincoln game. I mean, West Lincolnton, they were nobody talked about them at all. They didn't win their first game until October, and they've been 4-0, and before October they're 0-4. So, but Maiden, they've kind of they played okay this season. I mean, they lost to Watauga, they lost to West Lincoln, uh, but I mean, both of those games were competitive. West Lincoln is I like West Lincoln too. I mean, they're good. They lost to Bandies by 2, lost to Bunker Hill by 14. So I don't know. That conference is all about matchups.
Right. There's also a comment about it's just supporting the Reedsville in the playoffs, which is not a hard thing to do. uh,
That's a great place to go watch a football game. That field, they got turf on it now.
uh-huh.
Wonderful.
Oh no, it's in Shelby. I'm sorry, playing Reedsville once again in the playoffs. And again, that's probably I thought it was a support in Reedsville. Sorry, I had to put my glasses on sometimes. I think Shelby is. I'm definitely going to find my way to a Shelby game in the playoffs, so that I can get to Red Bridges and see some good football. I like watching a game at Shelby. That's a fun place. Um,
Shelby has to go on the road to play Burns last week of the season, and Burns is pretty good. They lost to Crest by only
mhm.
5 points. They lost to Kings Mountain, but since then they've been undefeated. Haven't really given up that much points either. So
No, Burns is always a good squad, but my money's on Shelby, um, and I think there's a good problem. Well, Shelby and Reedsville, I think, will meet. Do they meet in the regional finals, or is it a quarterfinal? That's the question. And who uh, who do you pick, Jim? Maybe Shelby this year. I don't
it's,
know.
it's all about the
Where,
matchups.
yeah,
Now,
where did you have Shelby? I know you had them as an A team.
I had them number 3 behind Monroe and Reedsville, but I mean, to me, it's all interchange.
Yeah, no, they're all real close to each other. Monroe's another team too that they're going to be. Those three teams will be in the mix late in the playoffs. If all three of those teams are not still playing at uh, late rounds of the playoffs, then something very unexpected happened.
The thing with Shelby, though, they play in a very weak conference, that 1A, 2A conference.
Uh huh.
And in they've played 4 conference games already. They have scored 38 touchdowns without giving a point. So they're averaging 9.5 touchdowns a game. I mean, of course, you're talking about Cherville, Thomas Jefferson,
Right.
and Highland Tech and Bessemer City. So,
I have seen Shelby play this year. So they came to Charlotte, and played Olympic, and I did attend that game. So I have had an opportunity to see Shelby
yeah,
play, and they are good. There's no question. Uh, I think they're as good as they all, they're as good as a Shelby team normally is. Uh, you would expect them against that competition to be scoring, 40 to 70 points a game, something like that.
Yeah.
If they weren't, then there might be some question. If they were only getting 28 and 35, I'm not saying blow teams out, but Shelby should be getting that kind of points in the first half against those teams.
I think Shelby and Hickory should have a home and home um,
Mm-hmm.
type of series.
That would be interesting.
I think
Um,
that'd be good for both of those programs. They're both Western North
it,
Carolina High School Athletic Association
right.
teams.
Yeah, as I think about that, what would, Shelby, excuse me, Hickory's got obviously some distinct advantages um, with their program because they're an extremely strong 3A team. It's not like playing a mid-tier 4A team in Olympic, and a Hickory would,
Hickory would win the game this year, but I mean, over the
yeah.
last 10 years, I bet you Shelby win it 7 or 8 times, though. Hickory,
Oh,
just the last several years, have been really strong.
it's only been the last couple of years, exactly the last few years, that they've got themselves, at the top of the state or the top of the western part of the state in football. What do y'all think Shelby? Who do y'all think Shelby could play in the first round? No clue right now. Um,
I'll
I,
put
I'm
something written up.
I'm not even looking at that until after this Friday's night's games, at least 1 week away, because RPI can change based on win losses. Um,
See, Shelby
in
right now is like they have the fifth highest RPI.
mm-hmm.
Number one is Reedsville. Number two will be Randleman. Three is Monroe. West Stokes is in the same conference, I believe, with Randleman, if I remember right.
So you
And
could
then the
probably
Shelby's
look at whoever is somewhere around 35th in RPI right now.
yeah, something like that.
That would be their matchup, potential matchup. Those teams in that range would be their matchup.
Let's see here, West Stokes. I think they're in the same conference with. Yeah, they're in the same conference as Reedsville. So if you were 20, if you were, let's say the Shelby gets the fourth seeds, they would play the number 29th seed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just 32 teams. Right now, the 29, the Moorhead over Eden, or it could be something like East Gaston. High Point Andrews. Now that'd be a fun game. If High Point Andrews went up to Shelby, both those teams have
All right.
some good history.
So Bob Duckworth says vice versa. Shelby is a high-ranked 2A program that could, play, participate in 3A conferences and could win a lot of 3A games, no question.
Right.
I guess my point there was that what I was trying to say, which didn't come out maybe clear, is so Shelby's got a 4A win under their belt in beating Olympic,
Right.
but Hickory would also beat Olympic and would spank Olympic. So you could say, oh, well, we beat a 4A team, and that's something to brag about. But Hickory's a different animal that could compete with a large number of 4A schools. And if you seeded them into the playoffs and they were able to get a high seed so that they had, let's say they started out in the top 5 seeds, Hickory could easily go 3 rounds in the 4A playoffs, I think. Now, the West, the thing is, though, the West is brutal. And you start running into these Mallard Creeks and things like that in the second and third round. But that's Hickory, Bob. My statement really was more about Hickory is just a bigger 3A animal than even that animal in 4A that Shelby be. So I think it would be, we could be wrong, and Shelby could make it a competitive game. Um, but Shelby, I just don't think many teams in 3A are going to be competitive against Hickory. So
Mm.
uh, I
You
think
know, the
the
interesting thing right now, like with Hickory and the RPIs, they have them ranked eighth in the RPIs. That's one
hmm
reason why I can't stand the RPIs. They have Hickory at 8, Dudley at 9. They have Crest at 1, South Point at 2, Irwin in
but
Asheville number 3, who's not even on my radar.
see, that's
It's so misleading, though. You know, it's the
is it misleading? So it's saying that you're playing winning teams is what it says. That's all
right,
RPI says. Is you play winning teams. It doesn't mean that. I mean, you could be a 4A team that played 9 1A games against the 9 best 1A teams, and let's say you win them all. You'd have an exceptional RPI, but that doesn't mean you're an exceptional 4A team.
exactly
So
right.
there's
With
a
Irwin,
balance. There's that balance of with RPI. I don't get too frustrated about it like some people do, Jim, simply because it is an objective method of determining some things, and I think the better teams are going to win no matter what. Um,
I think
it
there should
does.
be some type of weight if you play down a classification or two. Irwin, they the team that they lost to was a 1A team.
Mm-hmm,
They lost to Mountain Heritage, and here we are, Irwin at number 3 in the RPIs. I think they should
uh-huh.
weight it a little bit. If you play down a little bit, it should hurt you a little bit more. You know,
Yeah, I don't know how you do that with. So you don't. You know how you know what you do, Jim, is you switch from RPI to using Max Press power rankings,
right,
uh, because you can't you can't weight an RPI with anything other than wins and losses because that's what it's about.
right.
Um, you can you can change how you weight the opponents and the opponent's opponents. You can change how you weight that, which can somewhat adjust when you hit a lower classification team who's going to be probably playing mainly lower classification teams. I don't know. Now I'm talking myself out of that as I think about it a second. Because if they were a good 1A team, they're going to beat all the other teams and have a good RPI.
See what I would do if I would have a multiplier at the very top about when it comes to classifications. If you played, let's say that two of your games were against teams that were you're a 3A team. You play one game's a 2A, one against 1A. Have some type of multiplier instead of having the full one, 1 points for, or 100% for a win. Give it a multiplier and drop it down a quarter for that one game. I mean, it's possible to do it. It would be ugly. That's the reason why they wouldn't do it. But
Yeah, if you're doing it just for, but I don't know. See, what you'd have to do is you would have to take that one game and find a way to multiply it against your win. So instead of you getting a 1 for a win,
right,
you get a 0.95
yeah,
for a
exactly,
win. So instead of you being 1-0, you're 0.95-0.
exactly. That's what I
If
was
that,
going
yeah,
with.
if it can work out something like that, maybe um, that's a little more work on them and their algorithm because then they would have to search for that. Um, but I could, I just would like to see it move to power rankings.
Right.
Honestly, I just if we're going to use an objective manner, which I think we should, do power rankings. I just saw a link today. I'm not sure what to say about it because the site that's hosting it is the site that gave us that Asheville AC Reynolds score of a game that didn't play. But SI.com is doing power rankings for North Carolina. I didn't look at them. Just for some reason, it showed up in something of mine, and I started to load it, and then I got to doing something else, and I didn't look closely at it. I saw it was the same site that gave us the AC Reynolds Asheville's uh, incorrect, the game that didn't play.
Right.
I thought you were going to say do it. Well, let me say this though, Jim. So you play down in against a classification team. I'm going to tell you why that's not a good idea to multiply it like that. So I play Hickory. So I'm a 4A team and I play Hickory, and I get dinged for playing Hickory, but I don't get dinged for playing Garinger. I don't get dinged for playing Barry. I don't get dinged for playing Rocky River. I
Right.
don't get dinged for playing North Mac. I can just go through a whole list of teams that we talked about earlier that would unfortunately lose to maybe even 1/3 of the 1A teams
Right.
in the state. So that's why I think a power ranking works out best, because it factors strength of schedule, it factors everything against
Right.
the whole state.
Well, I totally agree with you. I'm not big on the RPIs that we're doing now.
No, I'm not either, but I like it better than coin flips or you know.
Well, you know what? I love what they used to do back in the day for the private schools. They'd actually have a seating committee, and
Hmm.
you might finish third in your conference and leapfrog over the number two team to play in the playoffs. And the number two team, it used to be, between Providence Day, Christian, Latin, and Country Day. And there were several times when the number three seed leapfrogged over the number two seed and got into the playoffs just because that number three seed beat Ravenscroft and the number two seed didn't. So
But see, you can do it in the private because the number of teams that you're having to evaluate is so small. I
right,
mean, it's like looking at a couple of conferences in 4A. It's like maybe looking at. It's almost like just looking at Mecklenburg County, the three conferences that we have here. 20, say 20 teams. That's more than what we were talking about when we had Division 1, Division 2, and the privates and all. That's still we have more public schools in Mecklenburg County than played in that whole classification. Um, so it's easier when you only have a couple of dozen teams that you have to look at, or even 3 dozen teams. But when you look at in just 4A West, you got 50 teams that you'd have to have intimate knowledge of. And yeah, I know you could slash some off. I have a hard time with subjectiveness. Um,
well, we got another question for you. Let's say that the state association allowed a centralized area for regional championships, where you, instead of going to the home field, you go to a neutral site.
hmm
Where would you think about doing besides like maybe Panther Stadium, maybe a Memorial
Panthers
Stadium?
Panther Stadium, without question. Um, I would have Friday and Saturday games there
How
without
about
question.
Bowman Gray?
Um, I think over at UNC, see,
Um,
um, Memorial. If Memorial really killed the stadium by when they did the tear down on the visitor, what is called the visitor side, and they didn't put back up enough seating, in my opinion. But I would really like to see Panther Stadium host uh, games, and I think the Panthers would get behind that. Um, I'd like to see places like North Carolina A&T, um,
I tell you, the place to
North
do it,
Carolina Central.
do it the foothills over East Burke High School. They have a
Uh-huh.
huge stadium. I guarantee you could do all four of the West Regional Championships, and all four games you could have enough. I mean, that stadium has to have 15 to 20,000 people. So, That's an ambulance, I think. It's my neighborhood.
I saw the lights.
But
But
that'd be fun to have like places like that, you know.
uh, Hickory non-conference teams have let us down this year. High Bright, Newton Conover, Cox Mill. You know, it's definitely. I think you're talking about your RPI
Yeah.
there. Um,
Well, their
and there's
RPI, Hickory's RPI will go up after playing Statesville, though. That will
yes,
improve. The Statesville's got a good RPI.
but
Actually, Statesville's RPI is better than Hickory right now. Statesville is at number 5. So he,
but it won't pull it up much though, unfortunately, because it's so late in the season.
yeah.
It's not going to make like tenths of a point change. It might
We know
make
the difference between like Hickory is at 0.6335 and the number 2 team, South Point's at 0.6747. There's
hmm
some separation there, but you got 2 more weeks. It could get closer there. Uh, and the thing about it, number 1 and number 2 is in the same conference, so one of them will be in the top part, and then as you know, with the winning conference winners, and then the other one won't. So
it's going to get seeded
Hickory
with the
already moves it
nine.
up.
Yep.
Hickory already moved up to that. Statesville, if they beat Statesville, they're going to go up to at least number 6.
hmm
Uh, Irwin, Franklin. I forgot if Franklin and Irwin. I think they're in different conferences. Can't remember where Franklin, which conference they're in. They might be in the same conference. Let's see, Franklin, I think it plays with the Henderson schools. Yeah, they play in the Henderson schools.
Well, personally, I
So,
think Hickory wins at least until they face like a West Charlotte, a South Point, an Ashbrook, a Crest, um, which is going
well,
to be late in the playoffs.
well, the other thing is they have Irwin at the highest seed. I think AC Reynolds is a better team than Irwin. And I think AC Reynolds will win the conference championship. Irwin will drop down.
hmm
So that move him up. Right now, I think if things work out like it is, I think Crest 1, Franklin 2, Hickory 3, and Dudley 4. I think everybody would be fine with that. Hickory
Right.
would get at least 3, homecoming or home playoff games, and possibly a fourth one if with Franklin. Franklin will probably lose to somebody, maybe to Grove or something like that, or West Charlotte. West Charlotte would be number 8 because West Charlotte's got a crummy RPI.
So the question is, knows Kings Mountain can't win the conference even if they win out. But what would be their RPI and seeding? And my comment, and then Jim, you comment. My comment on the RPI side is
Still
week to
too
week.
terrible.
Yeah, they're true, but week to week, your RPI doesn't shift a whole lot.
Yeah.
Um, you might be talking. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see tenths of a. You will no. I know you will not see tenths of a point um, change.
Maybe
Probably
five
not
one
even
hundreds.
100. Yeah, maybe something like that. Exactly. It would be a small if it's in the hundreds.
Oh,
It'd
it's
be a
going to be
small.
5/1000 is what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
not 500.
exactly. That's more
Yeah.
realistic. Is you're going to see thousands of some kind of change. So thousands being dot number, and then that number can change, and it shouldn't change an awful lot. Probably less,
Okay.
5 or less, right? Um,
Right. And right now I have Kings Mountain that would be a 19th seed, which means they'd be on the road. And the reason why
mhm.
there's several teams that have where Kings Mountain has a better RPI. I think Kings Mountain right now is 16th. West Charlotte's at number 20. West Charlotte will win the 3A portion of their group of their
Yeah, so they're going
conference.
to be a number one seeded team, and probably 8 or 9. Is probably where they're going to be seated at.
Right. And Parkwood's 2 and 6. They have a lousy RPI. They'll win the 3A part of their conference. and they'll they'll leapfrog over it. So Kings Mountain's got some problems there. I think they're, let's see what Oak Grove is. Oak Grove is going to win their conference. They're 15. Oak Grove's 15, Kings Mountain 16. Oak Grove will win their conference and end up probably being a number 7 seed. Kings Mountain will not. They'll be about 19th or so.
Yeah,
Kings
say
Mountain might might get as high as 16. They possibly get a playoff berth, but I doubt it.
so Kings Mountain, they've got. He lists 3 games remaining, and 2 of those are going to be tough games, and that's Ashbrook and Crest. And sorry, and I love Kings Mountain, and probably personally in the heart more than I do Ashbrook, but I picked Ashbrook to win that game. Um, I'm a fan of Kings Mountain, have been for years. Kings Mountain lets me down every season. I keep coming back to them, but Ashbrook is really playing some good football, and Crest is a solid team. So, I mean, you're possibly looking at 2 losses there. I think certainly if you come out of there with 1 win out of those 2 games, and then they finish with North Gaston. So if you come out of those 2 games with 1 win, you're doing really good. You come out with 2 wins, you're doing exceptional.
I see Todd says, I think you could not be a 1 seed unless you have a 500 percentage, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to go to the rules here because it changes every year. I looked at it not that long ago about the seedings.
I think if you're in a straight conference,
Yeah, I don't think it matters.
a straight classification, let's say a 3A classification, and it's nothing but 3A teams in it. You win the conference, you're a number 1 seed.
Right.
That ain't changing because that's the whole basis of playoff football from years back is about conferences, winning conferences. Now, split conferences, they could potentially play the game with that. I haven't read the rule to see, but if you're in a split conference, yeah, if you don't win, um, if you looked at and I don't think West Charlotte's in danger of that. West Charlotte's going to get a 1 seed no matter
I
what.
think it's Parkwood we might be referring to. Parkwood's going to have a losing record.
Right. So
And
are they the lower or the Parkwoods in which conference? They're not in the conference
they're in the 2A, 3A Rocky River.
with the Rocky River.
Yeah.
Um, I have to look at the rules. I haven't looked at the seating rules to see what may have changed, but there was always some question of, in my mind, I don't like split conferences. I think if there's the number one thing that I dislike in all of high school football that we've ever had, split conferences was my number one dislike. I
That's my
liked I
number
like
one.
split playoffs over split conferences. So, A and double A, I was a fan of that more than I was split conferences.
Yeah.
Um, but if you have a split conference, and I remember one year Newbern and Rose were the only 2 4A teams in their conference.
Yeah.
Um, I think I've got that right. I'm remembering correctly. Um, so if you only have 2, and that was when you were qualifying teams as you finish in a split conference. In a split conference, you could get 1 and 2 seeds. You just couldn't get a 3 seed. Um, the full conference could get 3 seeds. A 1, a 2, and a 3. Um, but if you only have 2 teams in the half of a split, they really ought to look at how. And maybe you got to start. I don't know. When we go to that game again of if they're the smaller classification and they're just overwhelmed by the other teams in the conference. Um, it's not. It may not be unreasonable for them to have a less than 500 record. They're really playing out of their. This is what worries me about this new alignment, Jim.
Yeah.
This right. What we're talking about right here, because we could see some hugely mismatched conferences.
We remember one time we had the 2-8 South Caldwell hosting the game.
Yeah.
That just drove me crazy.
Well, Garinger did that one year. Garinger, what was Garinger's record that year? They finished as a number 2,
Okay, right.
and I think they had like they had a losing record, 3 wins maybe something like that. Um, but they finished second in the split, and so they got to host a home game in the playoffs. Of course, they got
So,
smashed.
so right now they said conference champions will be seeded before any other qualifying teams by RPI rating. All other teams will be seeded after the conference champions by the RPI rating of the school, regardless of conference finish. That's fine.
All right,
Each
so you
region
didn't. So hang on. So on the first qualifier, there should have been an exception there if there was a 500 rule.
let's see here. For automatic qualifications, these are the ones that win their conference or the highest in any given classification. They said that each conference will be allotted playoff berths on the number of schools fielding a team in a particular sport. 1 to 5 team gets one berth, conference champion. Six
Mhm.
plus teams in a conference gets 2 berths, the conference champions, and second place or conference tournament champion. The highest finishing team from a given classification in the split conference will automatically qualify regardless of overall conference finish. Minimum of 2 schools per classification. Addition of RPI rating to handbook for conference tie break procedure as the final tiebreaker. Nothing in there whatsoever about your if you have a winning record or not.
Right.
That's what I remembered seeing. So it's all good. But some years did have that thing, and one year was something weird that it said you had to at least win 4 games to. I forget. It was like 2015 or 16. To do
Actually,
that.
um, in the 2000s, there was a minimum win, and I think it
You
was
had to win
three
like
games.
36% of your games or something crazy.
Yeah. Well, in the early 2000, early mid 2000, that kind of era, wrap up to maybe 2010 or down. I remember there being you had to, the first qualification rule was to win three or four games, but
Right.
we had some situations where we couldn't field a full. They ended up having to put some teams that had less wins than
Right.
the required minimum. So they changed it to I don't remember now, Jim. I used to run a spreadsheet to do predictions. I'd start with 3 weeks remaining in the season. I
Right.
had every team, all records, and what I would do is manually pick my winners. Just go through and adjust the records, and well, of course and then I let it calculate um, who would be the number one, who would be the number two, three. Um, and I remember having to do some funny stuff with.
We Interesting thing about it. I think I got what's going on here. It's a little bit confusing. Parkwood will be the highest. They get automatic qualification because they finished the highest in their 3A section of the 2A 3A conference.
Uh
But they
huh.
wouldn't be seeded as a conference champion because they didn't win their 2A 3A conference. Because it says conference champions will be seeded before any other qualifying team by RPI rating. They're not conference champions. They're just an automatic.
Right.
They qualified. So that makes sense. That's how they get around that 500 debacle. So they have to win that. All other conferences. See, if there's anything else on
All
there.
right. So hang on.
Yeah.
Now, is that because So does it not say if you win your split, you get a number one seed? Is that not said in there?
It's not explicitly stated here because you have to go back to automatic qualifications first, and you get a automatic bid if you're the top seeds in your split conference. If you're a 3A and you're got the highest, the best conference record, you win it. But then
But
when it comes to seeding,
that's just automatic bids though, but that's not seeding.
yeah, it's not because for seeding, but the conference champions up first, and it's not listed there. There would be a conference champion. That's where it gets confusing.
So West Charlotte may not get a number one seed then,
No, although they deserve one.
but they may not because
No.
they're in, they've won their split, but all they really get out of all that kind of work is an automatic bid into the playoffs. They don't get to get seeded with the number ones, from what you read.
I'm looking at the frequently asked questions. I don't see anything about split conferences here. There should be something about split conferences in the NCHSAA group.
There used to be,
Yeah.
well, I mean, there used to be in the handbook. Every
Yeah.
every year when they would release a new handbook, it always had. I mean, it always referenced split conferences. So this is different, and the question is that must have changed this year from last year. They continually change. They're trying to their benefit. They're trying to find the most fair methods of putting teams in to the playoffs.
One year they used that max preps, and you had a team like Croatan, I think, won eight, or Trask, that won 8 games and lost three, and they were left out of the playoffs. I know North Stanley one year, I think, went like 6-4, and they were left out. And I wasn't upset about it. They didn't deserve to make the playoffs that year, but
Well, they still use max preps.
yeah, I'm talking about like when they actually used the what's the word, they didn't do the OWP, OOWPs and stuff. They did that modified max preps where the most you could, the most benefit you could get through the power ranking is if you have like
Oh
a six,
yeah, that yeah. There
you
was
know,
it was not really. Yeah, that was
was
in the. Yeah, it was what in the 2015 time
something
frame.
like that. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. It made it a little. They did that for about 2 or 3 years, and they had their own little piece of the power that made a small modifier uh, to their overall seating. I'd have to go back and look at it again to remember how it worked, but it was like, yeah,
That's the reason why I never mess around with the playing around with the seeding, because you just don't know until everybody has reported everything in.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it used to be a lot of fun to project, and I did it for a number of years, kept my spreadsheets updated. But you always, things would change from one week to the and while you could really hone in on who would be the teams that are going to be in the playoffs, it was hard to project the matchups. Um, that it's like, no, this is what I have the Friday night. I'd crank one out Friday, after I come back from the game. I'd get something cranked out before the NCHSAA did their announcements on Saturday, and you, you might have a few matchups, but it wasn't everything changes to what it actually is, and who really cared what they were seeing before. So I stopped.
I think it was 2015. It was Dudley. Was it 2015 or 2014 or something like that? Or it was one of those years where Dudley had to forfeit in the playoffs because they they beat Southeast Guilford and found out that they had some type of ineligible player or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it upset the whole apple cart. I remember, I think Forest Hills got caught one year, um, and just right when you think you have everything worked out, somebody did something
Right.
that got them in trouble, and it threw your whole seating the pot.
Yeah.
So, well, Dale, I don't know about you, man, but I need to
Yeah.
call tonight.
Yeah. Let's see if there was anything else. I developed an Excel spreadsheet last year with all the formulas plugged in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too
It
much.
is. It is too much work. It's a heck of a lot of work, and what is the benefit of it? Uh, just to project who might play, because might is can be so adjustable that when you get to the Saturday and they make the announcement, it didn't matter what you said 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, because this is what it really is.
Right.
Um, I did it to drive traffic on the forum, and it certainly drove traffic. The most successful thing I was ever involved in, though, was the Carolina Varsity Report, football report. And
Right.
I so wish I could get some help and duplicate that again.
Gosh, that would have been fun.
I'd had so many coaches, Jim, that looked at it um, because it was so accurate in what it would tell you. Um, I don't know. I think a lot of them maybe had interest too because they were teachers, and many of them were math teachers. Be
Right.
surprised how many football coaches are math teachers. So that was probably even another reason why they were so interested in it. But I'd love to do that again. So Todd, yeah, that just whole thing of trying to get everything right, getting the information. You're hinged on information getting entered correctly into Max Preps because that's where you got to get your scores and all your other stuff from. And yeah, it's a lot of work for no return or
Right.
little return. Okay. Well, Jim, yeah, I'm ready to go too.
All right,
Um,
man. You take care of yourself.
yep. We'll talk to you Friday night after the games.
Looking forward to it, man.
Sir. All right, everybody. You join us on Twitter Spaces. Look for Langston Wirt's uh, tweet, and we'll be talking about all the games on Friday night.
Yeah.
Uh, we'd love for you to call in and talk with us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, guys, take care of yourself.